Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and today we are taking a look at an experimental sniper rifle from the 1950s. This has no actual formal name, really, because it was never adopted. But if it did have a name, it would be the SSG-1917A4, the Scharfschützengewehr 1917A4. What this is an Austrian Army experiment, because after World War II, the Austrian Army was equipped primarily with American surplus small arms, and when it came to sniper rifles, that meant 1903A4 Springfields with these little 2.75 power scopes. And the Austrian Army by the 1950s, they didn't really like those rifles, which is understandable. All of the sniper instructors in the Austrian Army had done their military service during World War II with German Kar-98K Mauser snipers with 4 and 6 power scopes that were really substantially better than the 03A4. But the Austrian Army also didn't have nearly enough 03A4s to cover all of its sniper rifle needs, and they actually had significantly more of the scopes than they did of completed rifles. So there was some experimentation proposed in 1956 to perhaps take some of these spare available free, because they already had them, 03A4 scopes and mount them onto what rifles they did have available, which were 100, 120 or so. In this case, actually Canadian, US model 1917 rifles in 30-06. And so this was the result, a really unusual hybrid design. Let's take a look at it. To me, it's just sort of kind of a weird optical illusion to take a look at this, because this action and this scope are not normally supposed to go together, and yet they actually make a really good fit, because the bolt handle on the M1917 is bent down like this normally, like that's just on the standard rifles. Well, that gives just the right amount of clearance as it is for a little scope like this guy. So that worked out really well. There was no mechanical modification needed to the bolt. They just had to remove the rear sight assembly and replace it with a 1903A4 style of scope mounting rail, and kind of presto, there you go. While we're on this side, by the way, I do want to mention, you ever wonder, like, what do you do with the scope cover when you actually want to shoot, because it like hangs off the gun or you have to set it aside? These I have not seen before, and they're really cool. They just clip onto the top of the rifle. Out of the way, but retained. Neat. Now, when the Austrian Army did these conversions, they really went all the way. They didn't just sort of half-ass this. You can see the marking here, US model of 1917, Remington. That's not the original receiver mark. That was re-engraved when they did the sniper conversion. Because on the real ones, that marking, this is an Eddystone, not a Remington, but same difference. Also, this is actually a 22 conversion, but that marking is up on the top of the chamber, which would then, of course, be covered by the scope rails. So they took this empty space on the left side of the chamber, or the front of the receiver, and went ahead and re-engraved, not, I could understand a serial number, that's obvious, but they re-engraved the whole marking over there. In addition, they went ahead and actually removed the front sight, as was typically done on the 03A4 Springfields. And going one step beyond that, they nicely re-blued the area on the barrel that used to be under the front sight. If you notice the color, that is because this particular rifle is actually a Canadian rifle, so it got a colored band at the front to designate it as being 30-06 instead of the typical Canadian 303. And you can actually see the Canadian broad arrow proof, or property mark back there as well. Note that the Austrians also added the serial number to the bolt handle, and they put it on the receiver here on the opposite side of the scope mount. Here, I think it is worth pointing out here just how well this whole system fits. Taking the standard scope mount from the 1903 Springfield, you end up with a scope that is just barely above the handguard, and yet it is low enough down that you don't actually need a cheek rest the way the 03A4 got one. So Like, to me, this system has a lot of potential. The 1917 was a fantastic rifle, but those weren't the only considerations in hand. These conversions were actually done by a class of trainee armorers in the logistics branch of the Austrian military in 1956, and they did a handful of them. The exact number isn't entirely clear. There are 3 of them known, including this one, and there probably aren't that many others around because this never got any farther through the procurement process. There were never any trials, there was no manual written, there was no official designation given to it. It was an idea. It sounds to me like it was an argument at some level between some people who were arguing for cost effectiveness, like we have these scopes, we have these rifles, it's very cheap to just assemble them and use them, and there, presto, we have sniper rifles, where on the other side there was almost certainly a contingent of actual snipers who just didn't like the effectiveness of these scopes, and we're saying it may be free, but it's worth every dollar we paid for it. Why don't we go ahead and actually make really better guns? And it was ultimately that second group that won out, which resulted in the Austrian adoption of the SSG-1917A4, where they actually went back to K98K Mausers with more modern scopes mounted on them. So there were only a couple of these. They're still floating around Austria, and frankly, I think they make a pretty cool hybrid piece to check out. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.